Mrs. M. Priyadarshini, ME MBA, is doing PhD, is currently working as teaching fellow in the Department of IST, Anna University, Chennai. She completed a master's in software engineering from Anna University. She has about 10 years of experience in handling courses for UG and PG. She was serving as technical evangelist for corporate over 4 years in Java Enterprise Technologies, software engineering, databases, OOAD, and design patterns. She is proficient in handling IT projects as well into concept development for enterprises. She is doing a research in the area of web services security. Her other areas of interest include software engineering, OOAD, databases, enterprise technologies, and service-oriented architecture. She holds many journal publications and conference proceedings in her research area.
Welcome to UGC lecture series in Computer Science, Java Part 18. So in this session, we are going to see about URL connection, TCP IP client socket, TCP IP server socket, client server connectivity, and a demo program. So in our previous session, we have seen about URL. So URL is a class which is going to hold a string of a format URL. So in this case, your URL represents any resource that is available across your network, that is through your www. So I need to specify a URL in a proper format. If your URL is not specified in a proper format, then it will raise an exception called malformed URL exception. So if provided my URL is correct, I can make connectivity to the URL. So I have already told you that whenever you have an URL class, just we check the well formatness of the URL. It means that we check only the format, whether it's in a proper format which specifies your protocol, your system host name, your port number, and then the resource that you're going to access. If it is not in a proper format, so your URL will not be properly formulated. So whereas URL connection is a class that we are going to see now. So you can see you can create a URL connection object from your URL using its open connection method. So here URL is an object of class URL, and I have a method called open connection which is going to return a connection of a URL. So this URL connection is going to directly connect to the particular resource on the network. So it means that a connectivity should be established to the particular resource, and I can access all the attributes of that particular resource. So I may be having a file, it may be an HTML file, it may be a PDF file, any format of the file. So it means that uniform resource locator is going to locate any of the resources that is available on the network. So I am trying to access the data that is available on a particular remote system, and then I am trying to download the contents of it, as well as I can also gather all the information regarding the particular resource. So now I have created a URL connection by calling a method called open connection of the URL class. So now URL is well formed. Then we come to the URL connection object. The URL connection object will specify whether that particular resource is available or not, whether it's a valid resource or not. First we have checked the validity of the URL format. Now we are checking validity of the URL resource, whether that particular resource is available, whether the host to which I am connecting to in order to access the resource is available. So you can see that we have methods like getDate, getExpiration, getContentLength, and getInputString. So getDate method is going to return the date, whereas expiration of that particular resource, your content length of the resource, and then I can access the input stream. From the input stream, I can read the contents of that particular URL resource. So you can see here a code snippet, int length. So this URL connections get content length method is called. So this will return the length of the content that is specified by the particular resource which your URL connection is pointed to. Now length if not equal to -1, if length equal to -1, it states that the content length is unavailable. So, the resource doesn't have any contents, else we are trying to print the contents. So, you can see now the content length is printed first, then we are going to print the exact contents that is available in the resource. So, if length not equal to 0, I am printing the contents. So, I am getting the input stream connectivity of that particular URL connection. So, my input is nothing but the input stream that is associated with this particular URL connection object. So, it means that now from this input stream, I will be able to read the contents that is pointed by the resource that is specified by the URL connection. So, here length. So, I am calling read method of the input stream. So, you already know that in your java.io package, we already have seen about the input stream. So, input stream's read method will return an int if it is not equal to -1. So, in that case, just I can print the particular character. So, here I will have an int and then it need to be typecasted into character. So, after that I am closing the input stream, that is the input stream of the particular URL connection, and then I have already checked for content availability, and here in this else condition I am printing that no content is available in that particular resource. So, now we will see what is a TCP IP client socket. So, in our previous session we have seen about TCP IP. So, TCP IP is a connection oriented protocol. So, it means that whenever I am trying to connect the client and the server, both the client and the server should be available during the connectivity, and then the data could be passed on between. Also, I have told you that in your TCP IP, there will be normally whenever we say TCP IP, there will be an acknowledgement that is received from the server side. It means that whenever you send a content, the content is received at the other end, that we will be able to know whether the content is available at the other end. So, this connection oriented protocol needs client and the server to be available when the connectivity is established, and the data could be passed on between your client and the server. So, for this we have a component called socket. So, this component is like a plugin. So, the definition of the component is nothing but your a plugin which could be connected to any other. So, I have a plugin which could be plugged inside any other piece of software and it could be run individually without help of any other supporting devices. So, a socket can be used to connect Java's I/O system to other programs that may reside either on the local machine or on any other machine on the internet. So, there are two kinds of TCP sockets in Java. So, now this socket class is available in java.net package. This could be used to connect to your local system, or you can connect to your remote system with the help of a port number. And then we have two kinds of TCP sockets. One is socket and other one is server socket. So, socket will help you in having a client end component, and then your at the server end will have a server socket as a component. So, now first one is for servers and the other is for client. The server socket class is designed to be a listener which waits for the clients to connect before doing anything. The socket class is designed to connect to server socket and initiate the protocol exchanges. So, this protocol exchanges is nothing but your TCP IP protocol exchange. So, server socket is going to be first initiated and it will be listening at the server side. So, it acts as a listener which could wait for a client socket to be created and to be connected on a particular port number. So, this socket as well as the server socket is going to communicate through a particular port number. So, at the client end I need a port number and at the server end I need a port number. So, my server sockets at that particular port number there will be a listener running. That listener is nothing but our server socket. So, here the socket class is designed to connect to server socket and initiate the protocol exchanges. So, now with the help of your socket you are trying to connect to your server socket. So, the creation of a socket object implicitly establishes a connection between the client and server. So, whenever I instantiate a socket object, it means that I am implicitly creating a connectivity with that of the server. So, whenever this object gets created, automatically a connectivity is being established. You can confirm that your server socket is available and you are able to receive an acknowledgement. You can see here socket, string, host name and in port number. This creates a socket connecting the local host to the named host and port. Can throw an unknown host exception or an IO exception. So here you can see that a particular system could be identified by IP address. So we have seen what is INET address class, and then also you know what is a host name, how your host name is different from that of your INET address. So your host name is just nothing but name of your system that you are trying to connect to. So it will be in form of string. Even you have INET address class and you can have INET address object which has a set of certain properties other than the host number, host name. Here you can see it creates a socket connecting the local host to the named host and the port. So it means that your local host, that is the current system in which your client program is running. So in my client program, I need to have a socket class. So I have to think that I have two programs, one is client program and the other one is server program. So your client and server, that both program may reside in the same system, or both of them may reside in two different systems. So in that case, if at all both of them remain in the same system, so it means that my client as well as the server is running on the host, that is my local system. If my server is at a remote system, so then I have to remotely connect to that particular system, establish connectivity and send data. The process is same in case of client and server residing in the same system or client and server residing in two different systems. So in this case, whenever I am trying to connect to a host and I am not able to identify the particular host on the network, or if I am trying to connect to the same host, I will not have this problem. Whereas if I am trying to connect to an unknown host means that it is a remote system. So if I am trying to connect to a remote system, that host is not available. So you are giving a host name, that host name is not currently available in the network. So in that case, an unknown host exception is raised. Similarly, whenever I am trying to send some data and receive some data through this socket, even you have IO exceptions. So when this particular socket could not be created, these two may be the reason. That is, these are the exceptions that could be raised while you try to create a socket. So here you need to specify the port number also. Port number is a integer which specifies the communication port that is available on your system. So in your hardware, we normally has communication ports. So these communication ports are given with port numbers, a particular set of port numbers. So normally we know that whenever I say a server, the server will be my web server. My web server, if it is Tomcat, it is available in 8080 or it may be available in port number 80. And then if it, in case of your Oracle, it's available in 1321. Similarly, each and every port number are assigned for a particular purpose, but it is not strict that you have to follow those port numbers. You have a set of port numbers through which you can make a connectivity with that of the other systems. So this communication port, you know that there are two types of port, serial port, parallel port, all these are hardware components. So now my socket is going to be connected through that particular hardware component, and then through that particular component you are trying to send your data to the other end. So here this has host name and the port number. Next we have another constructor with INET address and the port number. So this creates a socket using a pre-existing INET address object and a port, and it can throw an IO exception. So here an INET address object is used in order to make the construct your socket object. So in that case, it means that already the INET object has been constructed. So that particular INET is available in the network. So we need not worry about unknown host, because since an object is already created, it means that that particular system is available on the network. So now it could be used to establish the connectivity, this INET address as well as the INET address object as well as the port number. In this case, only possibility is you can get an IO exception. So, a socket can be examined at any time for the address and the port information associated with it by use of following methods. So, I can, if at all I need to know information regarding the socket, so then I can use these following methods in order to know information about the socket. So, what is the port number which your socket is associated to? What is the local port number? What is the remote port number to which it's connected? All these information you can gather. You can see that I have get inet address. So, it means that returns the inet address associated with the socket object. So, whenever I create a socket object, this socket object will be created or could be created using an inet address object. So, in that case, whenever I call this method, I could get the inet address to which your particular socket is associated with. Next is I have a method called getPort. It returns the remote port to which this socket object is connected. So, here getPort will give you the remote port to which your socket is created. So, now I create a socket in the client system and then I have a server system. Whenever I try to create the socket which is going to be connected to a server, in that case I need to specify the port number of the particular server socket to which it need to get connected. So, in that case, the getPort method will give me the port number to which your socket is going to be connected with. Next, I have a method int get local port number. So, this returns the local port to which this socket object is connected. Get local port will give the port number of your particular system from where that is your client system, from where you are going to make a connectivity to that of the server. So, now we will have a short break and continue with the server socket class. So, welcome back after the break. So, now we will continue with the sockets, that is about your server sockets. So, once the socket object has been created, it can also be examined to gain access to the input and output streams associated with this. So, it means that I have told you that whenever I have a socket, so the socket will be associated with an input stream as well as will be associated with an output stream. So, if I need to write something on that and if I need to access some information from the socket, so I normally use these two streams. Each of these methods can throw an IO exception if the sockets have been invalidated by loss of connection on the network. So, whenever there is a loss of connection, whenever I have a client server connectivity, in that case if due to any reasons the connectivity is break, in that case this IO exception will be raised and we will come to know that there is no input output communication that takes place through the socket at current instance. So, these streams are used exactly like IO streams to send and receive data. So, java.io package we have input output streams. The same stream of bytes is going to be associated with the socket 2. So, from your socket I send stream of bytes. To the socket I receive a stream of, so from my server socket I normally receive a stream of bytes. So, my socket will have an input stream as well as my output stream associated with it. So, you can see input stream, get input stream method. So, this method returns the input stream associated with the invoking socket and get output stream method is going to give the output stream associated with the socket. So, next we will move on to server socket class. So, the server socket class is used to create servers that listen for either local or remote client programs to connect to them on published ports. Since the web is driving most of the activity on the internet, this section develops an operational web server. So, your server socket is the component that is available on the server side. So, your socket will get connected to your server socket. Already I told you that whenever you create a socket object, it automatically gets connected to your server socket, to which port number the particular socket has been instantiated with. So, now your server socket class will help us to establish a connectivity to a local system or to a remote system. And then nowadays in the internet we have most of the connectivity is being done. So, normally web server will be the server. So web server could act as a server socket as well. So server sockets are quite different from your normal socket class. When you create a server socket, it will register itself with the system as having an interest in the client connection. So listener, we told that server socket is like a listener which is going to listen to the inputs that is obtained from any of the socket. So whenever some socket is trying to make a connectivity to a server socket, which socket? So this is unicasting. Only one particular socket could be connected to a server socket at a point of time. So it will be listening to a socket. So whenever there is an input from a socket, so your server socket establishes the connectivity. And since it is unicast, only one particular socket could be connected. If another socket is trying to connect to that particular server socket, so it will give you an exception that it's already been, the particular port number has already been binded. So the constructors for the server socket reflect the port number that you wish to accept the connections on, and optionally how long you want the key for set port to be. The queue length tells the system how many client connections it can leave pending before it should simply refuse the connections. So if your server socket could accept continuous connections from the sockets, it's not as such. Many sockets could not be connected at one point of time, but they could be put in the queue and they could be connected. So you can also specify a queue length till which your server socket could be keeping on receiving the inputs from the sockets. At one point of time, it will refuse provided your number of sockets that is trying to get connected to your server socket is beyond a particular limit. And also server socket is given with an input parameter as the port number, where it has to listen and accept the socket connections, as well as sometimes it may also specify you with how long you want to wait for the queue. That is, it's nothing but our time limit to which it need to wait. So the default port number is 50. The constructor might throw an IO exception under adverse conditions. Here are the constructors. You can see a list of constructors here. Server socket, int port number. So creates a server socket on the specified port with a queue of length 50. So server socket as a int port, a particular port number, int max queue. So it means that the number of queue, that is your maximum queue length. So creates a socket on the specified port with a maximum queue length of max queue. So here you can see you have a constructor with int port, int max queue, and then inet address. So this creates a server socket on a specified port with a maximum queue length on a multi-homed host. So local address specifies the IP address to which the socket binds to. So even you can have a multi-homed host facility with respect to your server socket. This is what is specified by this particular type of constructor. So now your server socket has a method called accept, which is a blocking call that will wait for the client to initiate a communication and then return with a normal socket that is used for communication with the client. So your server socket object could have a method called accept. This accept method will receive a socket which is trying to connect to that particular server socket, and then this will return a socket object which is currently connected with this particular server socket. So now from this socket class, which is returned as the return value of this accept method, I can access the input stream as well as the output stream, and then I can get all the information regarding the client from where this socket has been communicated to the server. So in Java 2 version 1.4 added get channel method to server socket. So this method returns a channel connect to the server socket. Channels are used by new IO classes contained in java.nio. So we have seen java.io. So here we also have another package called java.nio, where we could also access the channel through which this particular communication takes place. So this get channel method will help you in receiving the channel through which this communication happens. So here is a sample client server program where we have created a client that is using a socket, and where we have created a server program where we have used server socket, and we are trying to make connectivity between these two client program as well as the server program. So you can see that IO package as well as net package has been imported. So now I have a class client side socket, and then in my main method I am receiving 3 arguments. So these 3 arguments mean that I should give Java, I am running my program name, that is client side sock, my host name, and then the port and the message I need to send. So this is the way in which you have to run your program. So if your arguments.length is less than 3, this will be printed with. So it means that you have to execute your program with these set of parameters. So you can see string server name, our first argument is the server name to which you need to get connected to. Next is integer.pass in your port number. So this port number will be stored in the variable called server port. Then your message. So first you specify which server to which your socket need to be connected. Next I say which integer, which port number to which your socket need to be connected, and then with the message which you need to send. So now I am creating socket S is equal to new socket, my server name and the port number, and then I have an output stream connected to that particular socket, and S dot get output stream will give me the S is nothing but sockets. So this will give me the output stream associated with the socket, and this is connected to your data output stream. Now I write something on the data output stream. So I am writing the message which I need to write to the data output stream. So dos dot write UTF. You know what is UTF? We have already discussed about it. UTF is nothing but Unicode text format. So now this message is written on the output stream of this particular socket S. This socket will be connected to the server name and the port number which you have specified while running your program. Now at your server side, I have another server socket. So you can see server socket is equal to new server socket, the port number 1234. So it means that whenever you are trying to create a socket, you should create it with this port number to get connected to this server socket. So now server, it will print that server is listening at particular host and that particular port number. So socket S is equal to SS, that is your server socket dot accept. So we have discussed about the accept method. So this is going to return a socket to which it is connected to. Now I have an input stream. This input stream is nothing but your socket's input stream. I am receiving the input from my input stream of the socket. Now dis.read UTF. Now this will read the message that is sent by your socket. So I am printing the message. So you can see here I am compiling the, so this is the procedure. First I need to compile my client side socket. So whenever I compile this, I need to compile the at the other end my server side socket. So at the other end I am compiling the server side socket. So here I am trying to connect my local host server as well as my local host client. So client as well as a server could be in the same system, I told you that. So now I have compiled these two programs, then I have to create the connectivity between them. So for that, first server should be available and it should be listening at a particular port. Then only whenever a socket is trying to connect to that server, we will be able to establish a connectivity. So while compiling, you need to compile your client program, you need to compile your server program. While you run it, you need to run your server side program first, so that a listener will be running on the system. So you can see here we have Java server side socket. So once I run this program, as it prints that server is listening at user. So user, your host name, user is nothing but your host name. So now you can see that this is the IP address of the system, and then on this particular 1234 your server side socket is listening. So next I am trying to run my client side socket. So you can see here Java and then I give client side socket. So this gives an exception. So because args is not equal to 3 arguments. So now I have to give the input in Java client side socket, host name, my port number and message. So in this format I need to run the program. So you can see this, I have specified Java, my client side socket program name, localhost. So it means that I am trying to connect to the same system, and then I give 1234 port number and then the message. Message is UGC network. So next you can see that the message that is sent from the client side is now received at the server listening at the server side. So you can also run your client like this. So it means that Java, my client side socket, I can directly give the IP address instead of the local host. It means that it will be connected to a remote system with that port number. Here we have given just the port number of the same system. You can also give another port number which is available as in other host. So as a summary, in today's session we have seen about what is an URL connection, how to create a TCP client socket, server socket, how to establish the connectivity and demo program. So in your forthcoming session we will be anyway seeing about multicasting. So here whatever the connectivity we did was unicasting. So from this session we will be able to answer all these questions, list down the various constructors of socket, what is significance of the accept method in the server socket, and how to run a client server program. Thank you.